Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Something to Wrestle with Bruce Pritchard. Bruce, what's going on, man? How are you?
The stream is live. The stream is live. There was a little thing that said the stream was live. I'm great. How's everybody else doing? How in the hell are you doing, Conrad? Because the stream is live. We are live right now. I am alive. That's always a good thing to be breathing in and breathing out. I highly recommend it. Sometimes Jimmy Jam came along. Those were the best times. Now they're gone. It's been 10 years since you ain't been around. That's all. I think that's 12, maybe 12 years. I don't know, but it's easier to say 10. No, even if it was 12, it should be 10.
I think it's probably more than all that.
Well, it is now.
Yeah.
But you got to go with what the song is, because sometimes Jimmy Jam came along. That's what he did. Sometimes he came along. Those were the best times. But you know what? They're gone. So what is the time is now, and by God, we're going to come along.
Well, we're glad you guys came along with us today to take a look back at Great American Bash 2006. Let's jump right into it. This is an era where...
Conrad,
yes, sir.
Can I confess to everybody else? I could confess to you.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know anything. I as you know, I'm going to tell you all the story. So I got up early today. I was up early, bright and early, bush-tailed and doing stuff. Had breakfast, everything, whole 9 yards, man, like good stuff. And I told Conrad about this new thing out on my phone that I guess is not a new thing. It's called Do Not Disturb. Long and short of it, I totally forgot about this today. But I'm here. I just if only that Do Not Disturb were on here right now. I turned it off.
Before we clicked record today, Bruce said to me, "Hey man, have you ever used Do Not Disturb on your phone?" And I said, "Yeah, actually about 6 months ago I started using it, and it's worked in my real life." And he's like, "Man, it's a game changer. I'm going to make sure I got it on right now. Do Not Disturb is the best thing ever. I love it." And about 2 minutes into the show,
I swear to God, that was not planned. I swear, man, I swear. But because I got up and I started doing other stuff, and I got busy working, and then I just looked over and I had a thing on my computer, and it was Dave, and he says, "Hey, are you going to join us today?" And I'm like, "Maybe." So yeah, here I am, and I turned the Do Not Disturb off, as you can see, but now I just turned it on silent. So anyway,
things are crazy for Bruce Pritchard.
Things are crazy, and I just so we're gonna have fun with this show. You're gonna go through your notes. I have not read them. I have not even looked at them, and we'll just have some fun with this show and see what happens, because I don't know.
Kurt Angle is in the news here.
He is today.
Well, no, we're talking about 2006. July of 06 is what we're talking about. And it's ordered that he's going to be taking 30 days off. He's getting a suspension, and many people felt it was overdue. He had needed time off for injuries, and it's even written in the Observer that they wanted to take him off the road for physical and emotional issues. But the reality is he tested positive for anabolic steroids, and he had a prescription for however all that works. I know you weren't involved in this process, but I think it's not the world's biggest secret that, man, Kurt was really hurting physically in 2006. Is that fair to say?
I would say that Kurt was hurting physically and mentally. Kurt was not in good shape. He wasn't in a good place. He wasn't in a good headspace. Nothing about it. And as has been chronicled many times by many people, including Kurt himself, Kurt had a substance abuse problem. And I would dare say that this was probably the peak of that time, because, he just kept on. And the fact that Kurt's a cyborg anyway, there's nothing that can stop him. He trains like an animal. He never stops. He doesn't quit. He works through the pain. And during this time, he was just masking that pain with narcotics and everything else. So it was a bad time. It was a bad time for Kurt. I think that all of that coupled in is the reason that, hey, Kurt needs some time.
Well, I'm glad he got the time. Of course, Kurt's story is a great story with a happy ending. I mean, he's got life like he likes it right now. So we love to hear these redemption stories, and hopefully he's feeling a little less pain than he was back then. I know he's had some knee replacements and things done, and I'm just proud to see where Kurt is now. I'm also anxious to talk to you a little bit about Rob Van Dam, because in this era, you're going to lose Kurt Angle for 30 days.
See, I can do that because of my shoulder. I got fixed over here, and I can kind of get it. Okay, can't go back as far as this one. Get back. Look at that. So, yeah, RVD.
Well, this is the era where he's got the ECW world title and he's got the WWE world title. He's got both of them, and he's got both of them on his person at the same time. He has some marijuana, and he gets pulled over in Huntington, or after a show in Huntington, West Virginia on July 2nd.
In West Virginia, of all places.
West Virginia, man.
Yeah.
So he's going to wind up getting suspended for 30 days without pay. It's going to cost him a bunch of money. And really the push of his life. I mean, a lot of people had wanted to see him win the big belt. He finally does. You want to talk about timing. The timing of this was less than ideal. I'm glad that Rob at least got to say he won the thing. But man, what could have been? I can't help but wonder, what do you remember about this time period?
I remember it was embarrassing. It was horrible. And you think about where we are today. All right. And the different countries that you go to, you can go to Amsterdam, marijuana's legal. There are places in the Caribbean where it's legal, all over the United States of America. Okay. There are in Vegas and Nevada, it's legal. Here in Connecticut, it's legal. Massachusetts, it's legal. New York, it's legal. It's a plant. It's an herb that you smoke and makes you feel better. Doesn't get you drunk. Doesn't get you hungover. And sounds like I'm an advocate, but I would rather smoke a joint than drink a bunch of stuff and wake up with a hangover. So Rob was partaking. Everybody knew Rob partake. Rob liked to smoke his joint and chill out. It was unfortunate timing, but you know what, man? It was bad for the company. It was bad for Rob, and it was bad for the company to be pulled over by the cops. And the fact that it was Rob Van Dam, of course, made their news cycle and made them big deals. So that's what it was. And it was something that probably, had it not been Rob, may not have made the papers, but it did. And that's what you have to deal with. You don't have to deal with the what ifs and the what could have been or what should have been or anything else. You have to deal in the what it was. And what it was Rob got busted for having drugs on him and made the papers. And he was our brand new champion.
He's got a handful of Vicodin, I think, that he couldn't produce a prescription for. But the big issue, of course, is he's got 18 grams of marijuana, which, as you said, is not illegal in most places these days, but it's a black eye for the company. And just to add context to this, we're less than a year removed from Eddie Guerrero passing away. So there's already like scrutiny on the company and things like that. So it's said in the Torch that when Rob Van Dam showed up to TV, he was acting as if nothing was seriously wrong, which didn't go over well. I don't know if I believe that. Do you remember Rob's reaction to this circumstance or situation?
Yeah, I don't think Rob realized that it had become as big as it did.
I see.
So it wasn't like Rob was, this is no big deal. No, I don't think that Rob was like that at all. I think that Rob didn't realize that, hey, everybody knew. And that it was a big deal and that it had caused embarrassment and it had done all of this other shit. So he just didn't know that. He thought, hey, man, we got pulled over. I got to pay a fine. I got to do this. And life goes on. It wasn't the case.
When he gets suspended, obviously he's going to drop both titles first. So this, I know that wrestling is whatever. However, man, being the top guy, having the big belt, two of them, means there's a lot of responsibility with that. And Vince took that very seriously. So when he took the belt off of him, maybe he lost confidence in Rob moving forward. Would you agree with that? Like he didn't feel like he could
trust.
Trust.
Confidence, trust. I think there was a big time trust issue because anytime that you are the champion of whatever it is, you're the billboard for the company. You're what everybody looks at, what everybody strives to be at that point in time. So when you're the billboard of the company and there's a mark all over it, then that reflects poorly on the company. And that's what it was. That's where we were at this point.
As a reminder, they've relaunched ECW here. Kurt Angle and Rob Van Dam were supposed to be two of their absolute biggest stars. And now they're both suspended. Is this just another disaster for this WWE ECW? I mean, this thing was snake bit from the jump, especially when you see both of these guys, two of your top guys, suspended like this right away. Like, timing was off on this, no?
Man, look, hindsight's 2020, and we all agreed going to do ECW relaunch, whatever. People argue, well, you should have done WCW relaunch, or you should have done whatever the hell relaunch. My opinion then, as it is now, still to this day, is that WCW was a dead brand. ECW was a dead brand. Relaunching them, other than the one-off nostalgia act of ECW One Night Stand, which did very well, but that wasn't sustainable. It wasn't sustainable to go beyond one night. One night was cool. I get to see the guys I used to see, that I used to cheer for and chant ECW at, the guys that used to do all those crazy things. But they got older. They couldn't, look, man. And again, the same thing as I told Paul with Barely Legal. Your product got exposed, and not in a good way. Once you get past ECW One Night Stand to try to bring in the ECW stalwarts and put them in a different environment, a new environment, even if it had the same three initials at the top of it, wasn't good. Just wasn't good. Instead of creating something new, and I know when I left, they went with the NXT brand, but at least it was something new. So I just was never a big fan of the new and improved ECW. The place that you used to go chant in the bingo hall and go ECW, ECW. Well, that one that went out of business, we're going to revive it. We're not going to bring everybody back, but we're going to bring some of them back, and they're going to compete under the banner ECW. And we're going to focus it with the WWE superstars that are the antithesis of ECW. The audience didn't want that.
We should talk a little bit about the perception of Rob Van Dam, the way it was written about in the newsletter, as far as the way management viewed him. There's been a sentiment that was expressed in the newsletters. It says Van Dam was not a favorite of management due to the belief he was greatly overrated as a worker and below par for a headliner when it came to doing promos. Despite being popular enough to headline, this, emphasized in years past by Triple H when at one point a decision was made to put the title on him, kept him underneath the so-called glass ceiling. In WWE, being a headliner is a funny psychological deal. Unless forced, usually due to talent depth issues and injuries, the company seems to have an old line wrestler philosophy regarding the ability to carry a company. So he continues that Rob Van Dam really just got the title because they felt like they needed to establish the ECW brand. It wasn't necessarily that they felt he was the best man to be the champ, but it just fit the storyline and he was getting good reactions. So here's the quote. Vince was starting to warm up to RVD and block out the anti-RVD contingency in the company. Do you think there was ever an RVD or an anti-RVD contingency where they felt like he wasn't a top guy or he didn't get it or he wasn't really a quote-unquote WWE guy or any of that stuff?
I think there was a bit of that sentiment. Yeah, I think there was some. There was something to that. But at the same time, once given the opportunity and once Rob had a chance to work and to be here and be around everything, I think people warmed up to the fact that, hey, Rob's a great guy and he's a hell of a worker. So we can take that if we can now just harness that natural charisma that lives within him, then you've got something good. And I think that Rob, I think Rob did have it. And I think Rob was a special talent that, given that opportunity, could have taken it to the moon. The demons, if you will, man. I mean, come on, it's he liked to smoke pot. He was mellow. He was chill. But I never, ever, ever can recall Rob getting into any kind of trouble other than this one time when he got pulled over by the cops in West Virginia. So, as you look at his career, I think Rob was the right choice. And I think that there was a sentiment of people in general that, same as me, and I shared the sentiment towards ECW that, man, ECW is a dead brand. Why are we bringing it back? Because you have to build it all over again anyway. So just call it something else versus what a certain pocket of fans loved their ECW. It was no longer their ECW. It wasn't what everybody viewed over here. They wanted ECW, and that's not what they got.
Let's talk a little bit about this note, that the contract that the talent sign lays out this line. Any talent who is arrested, convicted, or who admits to a violation of law relating to use, possession, purchase, sale, or distribution of prohibited drugs will be in material breach of contract and subject to immediate dismissal. I get that the company's got to take a hard stance, but man, my head I keep coming back to, dude wasn't arrested. This is a ticket for marijuana in 2024, buddy. None of this is a big deal at all, right?
Different times, different rules. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about Sabu too. It makes the observer that when Sabu met with Vince McMahon, he's very apologetic. He's contrite. He's taking it seriously, and he's trying to apologize to everyone. But when he's meeting with Vince won't shake his hand. Is that almost like when you're a kid and your dad hits you with, son, I'm just disappointed? Is that what that is, do you think?
I don't know for that to be accurate. I wasn't there, so I don't know if that's the case or not, if that's just urban legend, if you will.
So let's take a look at some of the other news and notes that are going at the time. We should mention that there's lots of discussion about whether or not these guys are going to hang on to their jobs. Do you think there was ever a serious consideration to letting Van Dam or even maybe perhaps Sabu go? I say that because sometimes I know in management, decisions are made to make an example out of someone. We gotta right the ship here. And if we go hard on this guy, maybe everybody else will tighten up. Do you think that mentality existed in 2006 at all?
I think that mentality always exists, and no matter where you are or even what business you're in. So, yeah, it was definitely thought of, and I think the conversation was had, but I don't know that there was a real big, serious push to, we got to get rid of these guys or anything like that. So it was, do we fire them? What are the repercussions from this? And obviously it didn't end up with them losing their jobs, but it just wasn't a good time, man. Timing was the shits, and it wasn't a real good thing to do. And regardless of how we view the use of marijuana at the time,
right? It's illegal, man. It is what it is.
It's illegal, and that's why you look in the contract, an illegal substance. It was illegal, so. Was what it was. I did a lot of illegal things. So, didn't get caught, thank God. And you hope end times change and life goes on.
We should mention that Sabu is fined $1,000. So we know Rob's going to be out for 30 days, which means he's going to lose tens of thousands of dollars. I don't know the exact number, but it's a lot of money. He's at the top of the card. Sabu is only fined $1,000. And I find that interesting because the next day, as we're talking about, allegedly Vince wouldn't shake his hand on Monday. Sabu kept this apologetic act up. I mean, I'm not saying act, I'm saying he really felt bad and was handling it the right way. So after the Tuesday show, because this is the era where Raw's on Monday. So on Tuesday, we're doing SmackDown, but we're also taping ECW. Allegedly, McMahon approached Sabu after the televised event on Tuesday night for ECW and told him how much he appreciated how he had been handling the situation since Sunday and looked forward to working with him in the future. So word's gotten around here that McMahon's kind of low key appreciating and respecting the way Sabu has handled this. We've heard a lot of craziness about Vince, that he could fly off the handle at nothing about sneezing, or this guy wore the wrong color tie or whatever. But this side of Vince, that's a totally different. He's got two personalities at times, does he not?
Well, I mean, look, everybody has different personalities. You have your work personality, you have your home personality. And I think that there are, times that you have got to have the perception of being tough and ruthless and what have you. And then there are other times that it's okay to just be human and things of that nature. Whenever asked, I would say the most surprising thing about Vince is, he's actually human. He actually has feelings. He actually, does care and has done some really remarkable things. That just isn't in the media world in which we live in right about this time. And I'll use the term, the fake news. But you go back to media in general. Growing up, man, we had Walter Cronkite. Okay. Walter Cronkite reported the news. Walter Cronkite didn't editorialize the news. He just told you what was happening. He had no opinion about it. In our world, in the 2000s, everybody's got an opinion. You're no longer watching news. You're watching personalities interpret their feelings of what events are taking place that day. No different than, the dirt sheets in our business. It's just guys that are making things up and trying to sell to an audience that wants to hear sensational bullshit. And the more sensational, the more people are going to want to read and or watch and see. So, for a town in West Virginia, big news. That's big news for a WWE star. And it's going to get out there and it'll be sensationalized. So going back, to Vince, it's he's probably got more than one person running around in that head of his.
Do you think there was a perception in the WWE prior to ECW relaunching that, those guys were a bunch of drug addicts and fuck ups and blah, blah, blah? Was that negative sort of hanging over, that stigma, was it hanging over ECW? And did this allow a lot of people to say, I told you, I was right?
I don't think anybody was relishing the idea of I told you so, because it's business. And if you're going to take a chance on people, you want an even playing field. And if you do that, then they are coming in and they're fighting uphill. True or not, I don't know. Shit, they're the ones that really embellished and got out to everybody that they were fuck ups. They were all drug addicts and drunks and all this stuff. And we did all of our shows high and all this stuff. That's from the top all the way down to the bottom. That was the perception. That was a perception by them, created by them. That helped their brand at the time. How much of it was actually true? I don't know. I wasn't there, but I do know that, yes, there were those concerns, and all those concerns were addressed up front, though. So, hey, I don't care what you did before. We don't do that here. And it won't be tolerated here.
Let's talk a little bit about, when you're looking at this as a whole, I mean, I know you got to make a business decision. I'm wondering, and I know some people are going to say this isn't fair, but Rob Van Dam and Sabu are big stars and a big part. They're pillars of ECW and, marketable and selling merch, I'm sure, and tickets and yeah. But it's suggested in the newsletters at the time that, boy, if this had happened to like Danny Doring and Roadkill, they would have been fired. And some people would read that and cry foul and say, well, that's not fair. But other people would say, well, that's kind of how the business works, bro. What say you? Should there be rules across the board for everybody, or do you just have to understand business? I say that because I heard a story about Jimmy Johnson once, the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. They were watching a film session or something, and so they killed the lights so people could see the plays on the projector. When the lights come back up, there's two heads that are down where guys have fallen asleep. They weren't paying attention. So Jimmy Johnson stomps to the back of the room, shakes the guy's shoulder, and says, "Pack your shit, you're cut, get out of here." And he makes his way back to the front. He wakes up the second guy and says, "Wake up, Emmett." It's Emmett Smith. So we saw production has its privileges. Does that apply in wrestling as well, do you think?
It applies in life in general.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You have a salesman, okay?
Yeah.
And one guy, was bringing in $10,000 a month or $100,000 a month, and the other guy's bringing in $2. So when you have a sales meeting and one guy's late and both guys are late, well, the one that brings in $100,000 a month, he's like, "Hey man, everything okay? Okay, good." The other one is, "Pick your shit up and get out." That's just, guys. That's just life. That's life in general, man. Get over it.
We got some fun stuff to talk about here a week later. Let's move on from the Sabu, Rob Van Dam stuff. And let's talk a little bit about how we're getting ready for the pay-per-view. And boy, we need an opponent for Rey Mysterio. So we're going to open SmackDown with an over-the-top battle royal. And they've got a lot of good challengers in there. Guys like Simon Dean, Spanky, and Matt Hardy. I love all those guys, but I don't think anybody at home was thinking, "Oh, this guy's going to get the title shot." It'd be cool if they did that every now and again, but they didn't very often do that. But this is the era where we see it come down to a handful of fellows. It's going to come down to Regal, Booker, Matt, Finlay, Kendrick, and London. And I just love the idea that Booker sneaks in the win here, and everyone is going to hear Booker grab the mic and yell, "All hail King Booker." This should make no sense. It should not work. On paper, it reads stupid as hell. In execution, it was gold. I loved it. What'd you think of King Booker?
King Booker!
So great.
I love King Booker.
I do too.
It was, that was also during the days, man, where, all the backstage shit, guys like Booker, guys like Kurt, guys like Austin, I really enjoyed working with. So much so. And Booker would get there, and we had like his dressing room, his king dressing room all the time. And Charmel is the gift that just keeps on giving. She's always on time. She's dressed and in makeup, ready to roll an hour before everybody else every day. Just joy, man. She's just a joy to work with. And she sits there so quietly, but she'll do like little things, come up with just like little one-liners or what have you. And man, first of all, Book and I, our families are real good friends and everything. We know each other for a long time. So being able to work with him in that environment and constantly just come up with stupid shit for King Booker was just so much fun, because he would become, it was method acting. He would become King Booker.
It's so good. I don't even know.
Even lighting guys would say something, goes, "Address your king," and it was like, that's good shit.
So good. I mean, what a great character actor Booker is. Like, it's one thing to be able to physically look the way he does. It's another thing to be able to perform the way he does in the ring. And then we've seen his serious promos before, but then to just lean into this character stuff, it's like, wow, there's a whole new gear here for Booker T. Is this an era where you think maybe more than any other era, Vince fell in love with Booker T?
I think this is where the idea of, the characters and the longevity of Booker,
yes,
that he wasn't one dimensional.
Yes.
And you look at this and go, oh my God, all the things that I can do with Booker. It just, the table was set. All we had to do is go eat from it.
Well, let's talk about some other stuff that I know you're real proud of from this era. The Great Khali versus Tatanka. That was a match that happened on SmackDown.
Could have been a main event anywhere in the world.
And it was. Of course, the big reveal is going to be Daivari brings the casket to the ring, and fans are pretty excited about that. He opens the casket, smoke comes out, The Undertaker appears on the screen, and The Undertaker agrees to the Punjabi Prison match. And it almost sounds like Michael Cole is insinuating this thing's going to happen in a jungle. What the hell? Where does this Punjabi Prison stuff come from? Does Undertaker even know what it's going to look like when he's saying the words? I mean, this is not quite nearly as fun as the King Booker stuff.
Well, it could have been. Okay. The Great Khali was a prison guard in India. He's a sheriff or policeman, but he was a prison guard in India. And so couldn't have another big boss man, but you could play off of the fact that he was prison guard and that the nasty things that he used to do to the prisoners in the prison in India and got to think, what would a Punjabi prison look like? People had different ideas and different things, and then somebody came up with, man, what if it were all bamboo? They go, well, that's interesting. We never had like a bamboo cage match or anything like that. You want it to look like a prison. So drawings were made and look pretty cool. Then it gets down to, what is it? Okay, we got some cool fucking drawings and shit to put around the ring, but what is the match? and then I don't know, man. Vince or somebody came up with these cockamamie fucking ideas for what the match was. That like a gate opens and then you got 5 minutes there and you get out and all this other shit. Then you got to this day, it is the second most confusing, shittiest stipulation match in the face of God's green earth. The worst being that King of the Mountain bullshit that they did in TNA that to this day, I still do not understand. And I think it's the silliest thing that has ever happened in the face of professional wrestling and God knows when. Okay. So King of the Mountain worst, Punjabi Prison second worst.
Of course, King of the Mountain is the brainchild of Jeff Jarrett. Hypothetically, Bruce, if Jerry Jarrett were to try to explain the King of the Mountain match, what do you think that might sound like?
Oh, fuck, he couldn't do it. Well, you know, and you got the, we have, well, you know, we have a mountain and, well, you know, and then you have your around in the Jeff wins.
He was indeed the King of the Mountain. A reverse ladder match. Is it that hard?
Can you fucking go ahead, man?
It's a reverse ladder match.
Explain the fucking what's a reverse ladder match?
You got to hang the belt up instead of taking it down.
That's the stupidest fucking thing in the world. What you're trying to do is you're trying to capture the prize. You don't get the prize and they go, okay, here, if I could just give the prize away, then I win. That's the stupidest fucking concept ever for a match. A match you're trying to accomplish something. The accomplishment in this is to give it away. And then if you do something, you got to go sit in a cage for 5 minutes. Now you got me spitting up again. It's stupid. And again, Punjabi Prison, I can't even fucking tell you the goddamn rules did. It's just as stupid. So, you know, I'm living in a glass house here throwing stones, but I'm telling you right now that the fucking King of the Mountain thing is worse than stupid. It's fucking illogical, silly shit.
You ain't got to get hot about it.
Yeah, I'm hot now. Now I'm hot.
Hypothetically, if you had to venture a guess, how much do you think the cage weighed?
Oh God, dude. So, you know, bamboo, is actually very light.
But when there's 4 tons of it.
Hang on. This isn't actually fucking bamboo.
Oh, God.
It's steel. It's made to look like bamboo. It was heavy as fuck.
Yeah.
And here's the best part. As a spectator, you can't see through the shit.
Yes.
There's just layers of it. God, man. Oh, you are giving me nightmares showing me this shit.
It feels like something from a Rambo movie.
Well, at least Rambo 1 was good.
I don't remember.
It was. It was good, man. You gotta watch it. What is that telling about me? I will stitch myself up at a pace. I check every day. I don't know how fucking Rocky became Pat, but hey, yo, at a pace. Oh. Hey, yo, Adrian, at your paces, eh?
Talk to me a little bit about the switch to HD, because we're about 6 months ahead of that right here. It's not like you guys decide, okay, next Monday we're going HD. Like, this is a much bigger involved process maybe than people realize. And I'm wondering, we're about 6 months out. How far in advance did you guys have to start planning for the switch to high def?
Yeah, I want to say probably about a year.
Yeah.
So the entire industry was switching over to high definition cameras, television. You first had, people selling the televisions that were high def. The problem with that was that things weren't being shot in high def yet. So you've got a high definition television, but if the cameras and the production is not high def, then you're just going to get the same picture that you got before. The industry had to change as a whole to high definition cameras, to high definition makeup, different type of makeup. They started using the airbrushes and things of that nature. It just was, it was an upgrade in every single thing that you did. So your monitors had to be high def, because if you have a high definition camera, but you don't have a high def monitor, then you're going to see it differently. It's not going to show all the imperfections that a high def monitor would. So you had to have all of it for it to work. And that was, that's the expense, that's the time. And then you got to make certain, every flaw shows up. I mean, as close as we are right now, that's how close you would have to be to see the imperfections that the camera is.
Right.
And it just brought everything out.
I'm not saying this to be funny, I promise. But at this point, TNA had ran a handful of shows in HD. Do you think that you guys took a look at what they did, not to figure out how to do it, but maybe to learn from their mistakes and see, oh, wow, from this, you can really see this exposed, or, hey, we need to be sure that we don't do it that way, or whatever?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. We were looking at television. We were looking at how television was being shot in general, how the news was being shot. We were looking at everything else, because that's what, again, TNA didn't worry about their lighting or anything else. They may have shot with high definition cameras, but they didn't shoot with the attention to detail that your network news is going to have, that a primetime television show is going to have. So that's what we were looking at, because when it changed, whew, it was different. We're so used to it today that, you don't think about those things anymore. But when you first make the switch, it's like drastic, very drastic.
I want to talk to you a little bit about that switch to HD, because I know you say, oh, we're watching the news and things like that. And I get that. But I think a lot of fans have been under the impression that one of the reasons, or one of the things that has to change with HD, is we have to be careful not to, for lack of a better word, expose the magic of professional wrestling. And maybe that is when we introduce more of the quick cuts that we've seen criticized online for quite a while, maybe less now than in years prior. But from the HD onset, it did feel like there was a paradigm shift to where We need to cut away to different angles. And I'm wondering, do you think that was just a philosophical thing about we would need to create motion, or what were they really trying to protect the magic, or a combination of both?
It's a combination of both. It had nothing to do with HD.
Okay.
It's just in looking at how you shoot matches, and it's a different philosophy, and it's a way to, if you're looking at something, you cut on punches or you cut on kicks, your chances of exposing something are greatly reduced when you do that. So that was the philosophy, and also to give, a more action-packed and more fight sequence that people are used to on your television shows and movies and things of that nature that you get.
Let's talk a little bit about the other big angle that's happening here. We've got Dave Bautista coming back, and Mark Henry's calling him out. When Bautista shows up, he calls out Mark Henry. Mark starts down the ramp. Rey Mysterio is going to come out to try to stop him. Mark Henry puts a whooping on him. And then Bautista gets his licks, and boy, he destroys Mark Henry with chair shots. Mark's bleeding here. It's a cool visual, and it's a cool story because we're like 10 years into the Mark Henry run. I mean, you got to go back to like SummerSlam 96 era when you start to see him on TV as like, hey, coming soon sort of thing. And now it feels like around this time, it's really clicked with him in WWE somehow, because he's moving up the cards in a big way. He's cutting good promos. His work is good. What happened in 2006 where it felt like, man, it just clicked with him in WWE in a big way?
No different than any other talent in any other sport. A lot of times it takes you a while to become established and to find that comfort. Mark broke into the business having never been around it. He was a power lifter and had always been coached and always been babied all the way throughout his entire career to get to the point where he was at that time. A lot of guys had already spent those 10 years as journeyman wrestlers, going from territory to territory, learning how to work, learning what to do in certain situations. Mark didn't have that. Mark had it, here, WWE, and that was his exposure, and that's what he knew and what he grew up with. So 10 years to me is like, oh yeah, that's about the sweet spot. Some guys get it a lot sooner, and those are the ones that we see and go, oh, holy cow, well, he did it in what seems like, 3 or 4 years, when in reality, they don't take into consideration the fact that that talent already had a few years training behind them and underneath them. So, Mark was kind of coming into his own. And I think this was during the time that Mark really started feeling it and started feeling his character, started feeling comfortable in his own skin in the ring. So, it was just kind of his coming out party, if you will.
How important was Batista's return for SmackDown here? I mean, you got Kurt Angle out, you got Rob Van Dam out, you're down some stars. So just having Batista back, even if it's a different show, it's not Raw, it's not ECW, it's SmackDown. But he was like a tippy top guy on SmackDown for a while. It's got to be a big deal to have him back.
Absolutely. Anytime you get a big star back is a huge relief, because as you said, when you look at the guys dropping like flies, you look at guys that leave, and most of the time when they leave, it's not a phased out leaving. It's an injury, it's a drug, something or other, and it's an immediate bye-bye. Well, you don't have time to write them out and write somebody in. It's like, they're gone. Now what? Now I've got a giant void in the roster. And how do you fill that? Well, when you have a giant void, you can either fill it with about 5 or 6 guys to hopefully make up that void, or you take one giant superstar and put them in. Ideally, you have a couple of superstars to put in. But yeah, having a major star like Batista back that helps. That helps big time when you lose an RVD, when you lose an Angle.
SmackDown is going to make the news because the CW network announces that September 22nd will be the debut for SmackDown. And for some of our younger listeners who may not remember, The CW was a merger of two separate networks, UPN and the WB, which launched in January of 95 as the first new American broadcast network since Fox started way back in like 86. So the WB had a clear brand as mainly being the home of teen dramas. UPN has maybe a less firm identity. Sitcoms are pushed heavily for African American viewers on Monday and Thursday. Things like America's Top Model are going to be on this program or on this station, Veronica Mars, and then SmackDown on Friday. From your perspective, how big of a deal is this? Or I'm just wondering, the narrative with fans was always that Raw was the A show and SmackDown was the B show. And I've even seen some talent sort of refer to it that way. But the company line was always, oh, there's no such thing. Just based on the network, it feels less than. Would you disagree?
Yeah, completely disagree. Because the CW network is available to a lot more people than the USA network. So by comparison, one's broadcast, one's cablecast. The broadcast of CW is available everywhere, and it's free. Cablecast, you have to pay for your cable, and USA was cablecast, not in as many homes as the CW. And for us, it was UPN before that. It was just one of those, okay, they're merging together. It was a branding for what's the parent company? CBS Viacom. It was a branding for Viacom to change it all to CW. There wasn't much change in, you didn't change your channel for the most part in most markets. And it just, was just a branding thing more than anything. But it was available to more homes than Raw was.
Do you think that narrative perhaps is because some fans had a hard on for the show being live on Raw and SmackDown being taped?
Yeah, there's definitely a different energy. I don't care who you are, what you say, man. It's live is live. Live is what I like about live is once it's done, it's done. And there's no going back and fixing and changing. And I love being live without a net. So live has an energy to it. Live has a danger to it. And if something's taped, first of all, in the world in which we live, the people like to go spoil it for everybody else. I look at the spoilers in two different ways. One, okay, if I'm a fan that I want to know the results or I want to know what happens and you spoil it for me, then you're a dickhead. Two, you spoil it and you tell people what's going to happen. Hopefully it's interesting enough that it's going to get people to want to tune in. And the audience is going to say, oh, hey, this is going to happen this Friday. Oh, I got to see that.
Right.
I try to lean into that as much as possible. Still pisses me off when people do that. But when you tape in front of a live audience for the next week, it's going to get out.
We got a contract signing here between Dave Bautista and Mark Henry. And this is a segment that maybe is a little confusing. A lot of people are wondering, hey, is this going to be Ray versus Batista or Booker versus Batista? And there's speculation, maybe it'll be a three-way. And there's even discussion that Booker was scheduled to originally win the title at the Bash. But as of this past weekend, that plan had been changed, with Booker getting the title on SmackDown at some point after the Bash. How much thought and consideration is given to when you switch the title? And is there a preference for television versus pay-per-view? I know every circumstance is different, but can you give us examples of when it makes sense to do it on a pay-per-view versus when it makes sense to do it on television?
Again, I think that the story dictates it. So if you have something that is, that big money match, and sometimes it makes sense to go to, man, I want that big ratings match. The whole business has changed today. That's a completely different conversation. However, at the time you were looking at man, I want the pay-per-view, and I also want the live event gate. And television was your advertising time to advertise all those things and make people want to buy it. But at the same time, this was also the preliminary, money was getting bigger for television. So you got to give your TV partner something as well. So there were just so many factors. It just really depended upon the story.
Well, Mark Henry's story is going to get a major curveball thrown their way. The Saturday night's main event special happens on NBC on July 15th. And the big story coming out of the Saturday night's main event is the injury to Mark Henry. There's an opening tag match with Mark Henry, Finlay, and Booker T in a 6-man against Ray, Batista, and Bobby Lashley. As Mark Henry is charging Ray in the corner, he injures his knee badly. He needs surgery 3 days later to repair a torn patella tendon and a cracked kneecap. That's as painful as you think it sounds.
I was just going to tell you, if you were going to get a knee injury, that would be the knee injury that would be the absolute last on the list of getting, because the ungodly pain and of your kneecap and your patella, forget it. That just sucks, and it's devastating. And it's also very difficult to come back from.
He's going to miss a minimum of 8 months with this. And this is happening. And of course, the NBC Saturday night's main event special, is to build intrigue for this pay-per-view, which now changes dramatically. Mm-hmm. Of course, Batista's whole return is what a lot of this pay-per-view is built around. And he's, of course, supposed to be challenging the guy who injured him in the first place, which is Mark Henry. Well, that's all thrown out the window now. You can never predict injuries, but I'm curious, Bruce, in a time like this, I mean, it's funny to say, did you have a backup plan? But
no, we had this planned like 9 months in advance that Mark would hurt himself in this match.
Come on now. Here's where I was getting to. Do you just sort of fast forward and say, okay, we were going to do this here, and in 6 months from now, we were going to do that, but we just got to fast track that now, and we'll come back around to this when we can with Mark?
Again, it really depends on the story, and it depends on the situation and where you are and what you need at the time. Because sometimes you look at it and go, man, I can fast track that and do that right now. But is the end result going to be affected in a negative way? And if the short, it's the risk reward ratio. Sometimes you just have to, man. Sometimes you look in the book and that's all you've got. And you just have to bite the bullet and do what you have in front of you at the time. So it's just dependent upon the story, but the times and the place and everything else going on is what dictates your decision.
Well, the new plan is Batista's going to face Mr. Kennedy. Kennedy had just lost to Matt Hardy on last week's SmackDown. Obviously, we probably wouldn't have done that had we known this was going to be the case, but we didn't know. And I'm excited for Mr. Kennedy, but boy, I can't help but feel bad for Mark Henry. I mean, this guy has had what Wade Keller called an unremarkable WWE career. But everyone agrees this is the worst possible timing, maybe the worst timed injury in any era of wrestling. Like, this guy is clicking on all cylinders. He's getting strong promos. He's positioned as a killer heel. He's working with top guys. He's about to be on a big time pay-per-view, and it's all gone. Man, that's just fucking horrible, isn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely sucks, because your trajectory, man, is to the moon. And now here you are, and all of a sudden you're back on Earth. And you're not just back on Earth, you're back on Earth laying on your back. So it's horrible, horrible timing. And it's one of those situations where as you get into it and go, okay, I'm going to make the best of this. I'm going to take this time to get in the best shape of my life. Kind of hard to do when you're one-legged, but it has been done. And there, you've got to look at the bright side in that situation as a talent. As a company, you got to move forward and you have to forge on and you have to do the best you can to provide the absolute best attractions that you can to get people to come out and support the product and see their live events, pay-per-view, and watch the TV show.
We got to talk a little bit about a house show that happens in this era because it just jumps off the page at me. We're running it in Houston. It's a SmackDown house show. It's sold out. 18,000 folks here at the Toyota Center. This is a non-televised event. To be clear, not a pay-per-view, not a Raw, not a SmackDown, just a house show. But they had been running it pretty hard in the market. Raw, SmackDown, USA, and UPN. Why do you think this house show in particular popped off? And was it because you were the local promoter and made sure?
Because it was Houston.
There you go.
Because they knew I was going to be there.
And you're a big draw everywhere in the world. Everybody knows that.
Huge draw. Big draw. I used to be over,
You still are. What do you think of, serious business. How do you explain an anomaly like that where normally in the market on a house show, man, they're drawing a fraction of that. And then this one hit. Is it just a stronger marketing effort locally or is there something else at play, do you think?
Man, I just think it was timing. I really couldn't tell you. There are those you can have the same attraction in every market and have your markets range from, the major markets to your B towns to your C towns, have the same attraction, and it will draw differently in every single one. I think this was just, the right time, right place, and the right combination of everything. The market was hungry for live action.
Oh, man. I'm hungry to talk about the next. You want to talk about a snake bit pay-per-view. Here we go. Dave Meltzer wrote this. Just before the Great American Bash pay-per-view, the SmackDown side already decimated by injuries to JBL, Mark Henry, and the sabbatical of Chris Benoit for a number of reasons, including surgery, as well as Kurt Angle and Randy Orton being moved to ECW and Raw respectively, saw the roster decimated by a variety of issues. Bobby Lashley, who's 30, and Great Khali, who's 33, were both diagnosed with liver problems and have been removed from the wrestling roster for the time being. So they're both out of the pay-per-view. And McMahon makes the call on July 22nd to pull Great Khali out of this match with Undertaker. Big Show is going to step in for him. This is pretty crazy. There's a concern that maybe these guys' liver enzymes are so out of whack that perhaps this might be a long-term thing. Now we know, thankfully, that wound up not being the case, but goodness gracious, this is out of left field where we just don't hear about this sort of thing very often. What do you remember about this set of circumstances?
Yeah, it just was, man, it was a freak deal. And it was a situation, where you're there and again, man, bless their hearts and their injuries and everything. But, this was unexpected. This was something that you can't point to and say, okay, well, this happened in a match or whatever. They were in pretty dire straits from the standpoint of doctors' opinions and the unknown. And that's the biggest thing about doctors, is there's so much unknown usually whenever you're dealing with an injury or sickness or illness that they can't explain right now. And, I've dealt with it for a long time with my wife, and it's called a medical practice for a reason. They're practicing, folks. Okay. They don't always have all the answers, but their education helps them to diagnose and to help treat to the best of their education. And they're practicing medicine. So they're going to practice this. They're going to try this on you. Hopefully, if this helps, it may help the next person. Maybe it doesn't help you. Well, maybe it will help the next person or maybe not. It's practice. So you had a lot of doctors that just didn't know what the hell was going on with these guys at the time. And you've got to do your best to diagnose and treat. and hope for the best.
We got to talk about, I mean, the concern here is that they don't want this to become some sort of a hepatitis outbreak. And now obviously neither one of these guys have that, but whenever you start to hear liver stuff, you start to get nervous, like, oh man, what the hell's going on? But there's some speculation in the newsletters that all this new testing as a part of the wellness policy and the way that thing has continued to evolve since Eddie Guerrero has brought all this stuff on the radar, where previously without the testing, we might not have known. So it's certainly a great positive for the well-being of the performers and the human beings and all that. But man, creatively, this has got to throw you for a heck of a loop, because we weren't doing this type of testing a few years ago. And now that we are, thankfully, these guys can get healthy. But at the same time, it's like, damn nation, when it rains, it pours creatively, right?
Double-edged sword, man, because you want all of your athletes to be healthy and be performing at peak performance. The reality of the situation is they're human beings and they're going to get injured. There are going to be things that come up that if we weren't doing the type of testing and we didn't have the protocols put into place, that we wouldn't discover a lot of things. The business grew and we've gotten a lot better as years have gone on. I go back to the 70s. You had a grumpy old doctor that was only there for his $25 payday to take the guy's blood pressure. And if it was high, they would say, oh yeah, I just got done working out, running. I'll go, oh, okay, right down. They're cleared, and the state commissions there take their 5%. They, did nothing for the talent. But that was also based on promoters looking at, I got to protect my attraction. And so the guy's got high blood pressure. I can put him in and he'll be fine. He's done this before, and maybe he doesn't have to work as hard. Man, that whole criteria, that whole mindset has changed, looking after the well-being and the health of your talent, your athletes, and taking care of them, because especially from the older generation, they're going to look at, man, just take me up. I want to go. Put me in, coach. And they'll do whatever it takes. Not always the right things, doing whatever it takes to get back in. So it's a double-edged sword, but I think that it's the right call to do all of the testing and to do everything that you can so that your talent are at best, and that there isn't some freak thing going on in their body that needs to be addressed, and we can catch it hopefully in its infancies and go on again. But it's practice, and things are going to happen, good and bad.
And this is good news for people who are in the wrestling business. I mean, to have this level of a backstop, I guess is what I'd like to call it. Brian Alvarez wrote this: a few weeks ago, the wellness policy looked like a joke. This week, things are much different. The full list of wellness victims at press time is as follows. For SmackDown, it's Lashley, Khali, Kid Cash, Super Crazy, Joey Mercury, and Matt Hardy. Lashley and Khali are both out with liver issues. Kid Cash and Jamie Noble are both out. And while some sources are saying it's attitude related, one source stated that only Noble did not deserve to be included on the wellness list. Cash, therefore, appears to be out due to issues related to the last round of medical testing, like liver enzymes, etc. Crazy was pulled due to elevated liver enzymes. Hardy's being pulled. And while we don't have confirmation as to why, the WWE source did not say why he was placed on the wellness list unfairly. Hardy claims his blood tests found traces of staph. Mercury was sent to rehab several months back. Over on ECW, it's Kurt Angle and Rob Van Dam. On Monday Night Raw, it's Chris Masters and Renee Dupree. And down in developmental, it's Ryan Reynolds. Man, we've got so many people on the sidelines as a result of the wellness policy. That is the definition of the double-edged sword you talked about. Like, it's great that, hey, we're taking better care of ourselves, but at the same time, shit, where'd everybody go?
Well, and it's new for the talent as well. So they're adapting to it, and they're finding out, I can't take that. No, well, I shouldn't be doing that. Or I've got this issue that I need to work through. And I believe that most of the issues that came up are all things that they could work through and figure out. So I think it was good across the board. And again, always evolving and always getting better. At least we had one that was that was in place, good, bad, or indifferent, that could grow and change and become what it is become, today. And it will continue to grow and will continue to change. And I think that most people, as much as I like to joke with the medical folks and say, who you taking from me today? Thank God we've got them in place so that everybody is safe and everybody's in the best shape they can be in.
We've got something that's interesting in this era where we know that Lashley is going to be on the sidelines because he's got a wellness issue, but he's still wrestling Fit Finlay on SmackDown for 15 minutes and 2 seconds. Is this a function of, hey, we're going to take him off and let him get better? We just got to have a storyline reason to get there. I mean, where do we draw the line, if that makes sense?
Well, that's going to be the medical people's decision as to whether or not they feel that he can do this safely or not. That's not our decision. That's one where you then go back and you put it in the hands of the medical. They're the ones that will tell you, okay, yeah, he can do this, but then we need to take care of him over on this side. I can't tell you exactly what that decision was at the time, but I'm sure that that's how it was in place. They'll tell us what they can and can't do, and if it's something that they feel they can do safely, then they're cleared to do it.
Hey, so let's talk about the main event of SmackDown. Right before we get to the Great American Bash, it's Rey Mysterio and Booker T. I'm legitimately asking, if we're going to sell this on pay-per-view, why would we do the match right here?
Well, goddamn, Conrad, we didn't have anybody else for the fucking show.
Okay, that's logical. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I guarantee you that's probably what it was. Like, well, shit, we got nothing else. Let's do this, and by God, we'll work something out of it to get to the pay-per-view.
Rey Mysterio gets a win over Booker T here. He didn't win a lot on television as champion. Talk to me about that. What do you think? I know you've told us for years that Vince really went to you with the whole Mighty Mouse character. He was looking for his Mighty Mouse. And I appreciate that that's what he's trying here, maybe, perhaps. But he's our champion, but he sure is losing or getting beat up a lot. I know he's the baby face. I know he's the underdog, but do you think perhaps we did it too much with Rey in this era?
No.
Okay.
I think that's what intrigued people with Rey. People wanted Rey to fight back and wanted Rey to overcome. I don't think it would have been believable if Rey had been this world beater. Rey needed to squeak out the victory. Rey needed to be victorious in the end, be the guy that could do the impossible when it needed to be done. But nobody was going to believe that Rey was going to stand there toe-to-toe with, a Booker T or a Big Show or a Batista or anybody else and hold his own. He could take a hell of an ass whooping. He would be able to outmaneuver them and outwork them at the end to get the victory, because that's all he needed to do was get the victory. And there wasn't anybody that could take an ass whooping like Rey Mysterio.
Roll tight on that, man. Let's talk about the pay-per-view. We're finally here. There is a dark match. It doesn't air on television. Funaki over Simon Dean with a small package. Indeed. Paul London and Brian Kendrick.
God, that wasn't on TV.
You don't like Funaki?
I love Funaki. You know Funaki's son. I told you this. I met his son.
Yes.
The other day. Yeah. What a fine young man.
So why didn't you want Funaki on TV?
Well,
Okay.
Indeed.
Shout out to Simon Dean.
Fuck Simon Dean.
Oh, come on. He's a nice guy.
You know what? I couldn't pick him out of a lineup.
Okay. Well, he's a nice guy. I like him.
Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't go so far as say I'd take a bullet for him, but I like him.
Yeah, I don't care.
Paul London and Brian Kendrick are in the opening match here against Kid Cash and Jamie Noble. Cash was suspended. Maybe, I don't really understand why, but here we go. It's a fun match. A lot of talented performers. And this feels like a match that might be ahead of its time. Paul London and Brian Kendrick, Kid Cash and Jamie Noble. Do you think those guys would be bigger stars in the 2024 era than they were?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Tremendous talents, man. You take a guy like Brian Kendrick, and if Brian Kendrick had 6 more inches in height, and another 50 pounds on him, he would have been the world champion. Nobody could stop him. His work was believable. His selling was great. And it was like, just unbelievable talent. Same thing with Paul London. Great talent, could do it all. And unfortunately, they weren't the biggest guys in the world. Look on the other side, Kid Cash and Jamie Noble. Awesome talents, man. And I think that, again, it take those talents as they were then in 2024, they would be huge stars. And in my eyes, I think they were huge stars then. I appreciated their work so much because, I enjoy wrestling, man. I enjoy it. So to watch those four guys just go is exactly what they did. And they tore the house down, and they got the audiences then just as they would get them now. But tremendous workers.
Talk to me a little bit about the creative. I mean, was anybody an advocate for them? Because it does feel like in an era where the tag titles are switched around quite a bit, they had a pretty lengthy run as tag champs. It does feel like they were featured a little bit more than you may have expected. Not nearly what it would be in 2024. But was there anyone really advocating for them behind the scenes?
Yeah. That's why they were tag team champions. They were tag team champions to go out and be different and be able to do things that other, tag teams couldn't do. They were a completely different act. And I think that they had their spot and did very well with it.
Man, one of the great what ifs, Brian Kendrick and Paul London in 2024. So let's talk about Teddy Long. He's going to come out and announce that Bobby Lashley wouldn't be wrestling due to an elevated enzyme count in his liver. JBL's going to use that for a little bit of comedy for a bit. Lashley's going to show up, and he's not happy with the way this has gone down, of course. He's in tears nearly doing the mic work, saying he came all this way for a match, and now he can't wrestle. What do you remember about this moment here?
Well, it's a real moment, frankly. It's a situation where you're taking a real life situation, you're putting it out in front of the audience and allowing a talent to emotionally say how they're feeling. And that's what we did here. So it was, look, man, it's real. Sometimes reality enters into fantasy, and that's life. That's life. That's other people say.
Hey, I really want to ask you about how do you decide, like, what gets a storyline reason and what gets a real reason? I mean, I know that we want to explain to people who bought the pay-per-view and bought a ticket and all that, hey, here's why you're not getting that match. We're not trying to bait and switch you. Here's really what happened. But we don't really always do that. Sometimes we sort of explain it away. Why the need, do you think, to just come out and just tell the truth? So it didn't look like creatively everybody's hurt at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, look, sometimes, yes. I mean, that's the answer. It depends on the story and depends on the situation. So if a story warrants, look, man, we can make a story out of this, then we make a story out of it. If you can't, well, then just go on out and the story is reality. And that becomes your story.
It's a wild thing, man. There's even some signs in the crowd that are kind of funny, and maybe they shouldn't be. But there's a sign that stood out that said, I came to see who was left. Next up, Fit Finlay retaining the U.S. title over William Regal. 13 minutes and 49 seconds. These guys have absolutely beaten the ever-loving shit out of each other before. Over in WCW, Tony Schiavone called it his favorite match he ever called. His favorite match he ever saw in WCW. What'd you think about their chemistry together, Finlay and Regal?
Two Europeans beating the shit out of each other? Yeah, it's great. Man, they loved to work. They loved to work snug, and they're two of the greatest that have ever laced up a pair of boots. So, Fit was the type of guy that he would get the best out of you. And if you didn't fight him back, if you fought him back, man, he'd give you everything that you wanted. If you didn't fight him back, he'd eat you up. So, Regal knew that, and Regal was of the same mindset. So you get two guys that want to go out there and fight for the very best match and fight to be the ones that everybody is trying to follow. I enjoyed the hell out of their matches. And it kind of reminded me of two guys you won't know who the fuck I'm talking about. Les Thornton and Jeff Ports. Les was British. Jeff may have been British too, or he may have been German. But they were friends. They traveled together. They beat the shit out of each other. And I'm going back in the 70s, and they were preliminary guys. I don't think either one. Les was the World Junior Heavyweight Champion, NWA World Junior Heavyweight Champion for a spell, but they were both double tough, and they beat the hell out of their opponents, but boy, they beat the hell out of each other even more, and loved it. And I always remember those matches. So I would always compare Fit and Regal to Jeff Ports and Les Thornton, just going out and putting on these incredible matches that had people with their mouth hung open going, oh my God, that was real.
It's a nice substitute. If we're not going to get the storyline match of Fit Finlay and Bobby Lashley, the fans in the house, they don't really care about it for whatever reason. It's a cold match, of course, and they're not really behind Regal. So there's boring chance that Michael Cole is trying to say, oh, they're disappointed they wanted Lashley, but it's a fun match and a really strong finish. Regal actually finishes with a pretty good cut over the left eye from a real shot from Fit Finlay. Good stuff. Next up, two other friends squaring off. Gregory Helms, the Hurricane, and Matt Hardy are going to go 11 minutes and 43 seconds. It was not advertised or promoted on television, but this is a fun match.
What's up with that?
Helms is going to get the win with a schoolboy holding the tights. And it's written here, the reason Hardy lost the match was due to his impending suspension and this being punishment. He's the most punished man in the last 5 years. 3.25 stars. I know these guys are great friends in real life. What did you think about their chemistry bell to bell?
I thought that they were excellent together. Again, they'd known each other. They trained together. They were doing the Omega Wrestling Federation or whatever the hell it was that the Hardys had in the Carolinas since they were kids. So they knew each other and had tremendous chemistry.
Next up is something where I feel bad for all involved. We've had a couple of fun matches, 3 fun matches in a row. I just want to remind you, here's what we're looking at. And I hate to use words like this, but from a work rate standpoint, from a cage match standpoint, whatever you want to say, look at the talent here. Paul London and Brian Kendrick against Kid Cash and Jamie Noble. Badass match. Fit Finlay and William Regal. Badass match. Hurricane and Matt Hardy. Super fun match. And now this. Big Show and Great Khali are going to come out and attack Undertaker backstage. Teddy Long is so mad that he's ordering Big Show to face the Undertaker instead of Khali. Fans are booing, and it's written here, I was shocked at how weak an angle they came up with for the substitution, but they didn't want Undertaker so badly hurt that he'd have to sell the whole match, and they didn't want to hurt Khali in any manner. In a sense, this was a lucky break. Undertaker Khali in that structure for 20 minutes probably would have been one of the worst matches in history. Plus Khali would probably lose this time. Now they can still bring the program back with Khali still untouched when his health is better. My goodness. We're making the switch.
You're welcome.
Golly. Talk to me about the decision we'll just fix it during the show. We'll do it day of. Golly.
Well, look, man, you didn't know. You really didn't know whether Khali was going to be able to go until day of.
I got you.
Okay. And that's what you have to deal with a lot of times with some of these medical decisions. They can tell you, oh, they should be able to do this or they should be able to do that. They don't know till day of, and they put hands on them and they see how they're feeling day of. That's another, you put yourself in these situations where they're making the call and you have to live by the sword. You have to You have to accept it. You hope for the best, but sometimes you're not always going to get the best news. Sometimes they'll say, hey, yeah, they can go out and have a 15-minute match. Other times they'll say, no, they can't. And this was a situation, no, they can't. Well, what can they do? Well, they could do this. They could do that. And I get it. The audience doesn't understand that. But when you're hoping for the best and you don't have a decisive yes or no, you roll the dice sometimes, man, and you go and you're trying to deliver what you advertise. You're trying to give the people, what they wanted. And sometimes it's just not possible. And you do the best you can with the cards you're dealt. And that's all, anybody can really ask for. And it's, some guys got cleared to do something. Some guys didn't.
I guess we felt like we needed, it would have been hard to come out maybe and have Teddy Long say, hey, listen, we had a few guys who had a medical issue and we're going to pull them off the card. Bobby Lashley won't be competing. Great Khali won't be competing. We know we could do that with Lashley, but with Khali, it's like on some level, no disrespect to the Great Khali. I would imagine fans who bought the pay-per-view are probably like, I want to see The Undertaker in this Punjabi cage match, whatever the hell that is. He's one of my favorite characters and I've never heard of this. I want to do this. I want to see this. That is more likely. I mean, how else could you slide somebody else and say, okay, because that's what we're going to do, by the way. It's Undertaker.
100%.
Yeah.
Look, the attraction was what the fuck is a Punjabi prison?
There you go. Well, we find out.
Did we?
With the Big Show and the Undertaker in a Great Khali gimmick match, the Punjabi prison match.
The face on the Big Show, if you go back to that slide there for a minute, says it all. So, folks, check it out on YouTube and go back, to 131.29 or whatever the hell it is. And look at the picture of the Big Show right there, looking at the Punjabi prison. That's the look that everyone had backstage when we saw the Punjabi prison.
Okay? Help me understand.
A bit of confusion, a bit of anger, a bit of what the fuck. And then it's like, oh, shit, I got to get in there. In the Punjabi prison. Now, there's actually a ring in the middle of that. You can't see the ring because of all of the bullshit structure all around it, but there is a ring in the middle of it. And, it's horrible.
It is horrible. And it starts with our new fearless monster, the Big Show, coming to the ring crying because he's scared. And there's two cages.
We were all crying and scared too.
And when a cage door opens, you have 1 minute to escape and it shuts. And that happened twice. And the third time, the Undertaker got out. And the rules meant with nobody else in, it was easy for Show to ask for the fourth door and walk right out. He then throws the Undertaker into the ring. The door closes on him. Before Show can escape the second cage, Undertaker's climbing off. He's 2/3 of the way down, gives Show a body block, and the second cage made of sticks collapses so easily. It was like a fart in church finish. Before the finish, they also went through a table and the dreaded Punjabi table. They're going to go through the cage. The Undertaker's hand is raised. So, yeah, there's a little bit of blood here. Khali's going to come back out at the end of the match. Of course, he never touches anyone. JBL is comparing the Undertaker to Michael Jordan in his final year with the Wizards, saying he used to be the greatest and now he's only showing flashes of greatness. This was bad.
Oh, it was not that good.
They went 21 minutes and 35 seconds. Why? I mean, it feels like it goes on and on and on and on.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's Vince's reaction backstage when this is happening? Is he just miserable? He can't be.
Yeah, it was rotten. I mean, look, you've got, frankly, two of the biggest stars ever in the industry in Big Show and The Undertaker in the ring in a Punjabi prison that nobody can see The Undertaker and Big Show in. And they didn't know what the fuck to do with the structure. Because there were toys and stuff in there, but it's like, okay, hey, here's a rope to swing from. Here's a trick on swinging from a rope. You need to be up at an angle at a different place, not just have a rope hanging and you're going to swing. It doesn't work that way. Yeah, it's horrible. It was horrible. It was beyond right. If you want to see, and keep in mind, you're not going to see that much because it's this horrible structure. But if you want to see one of the worst matches ever, and another reason why Undertaker probably sends my calls to voicemail sometimes. He always calls back, but it's still. This is one of those reasons. This here Punjabi Prison, probably very grateful that it was Big Show and not Khali, but rotten nonetheless. I don't know what the hell we would have done with Khali in the thing. Hindsight being 2020. I don't know what the I don't know why or what the hell we did with Big Show, but to think about having to do something with the great Khali during this is terrifying.
We should also mention that this show continues. So you would think they'd set this structure up to start the show or to close the show. It's match 4, match 5.
Well, they burn it, one of the two.
Yeah. Just throw it in the dumpster and let's go. Bra and panties match, 4-way dance. Ashley wins over Crystal, Jillian Hall, and Michelle McCool. It's a dud rating. It is what it is. Mr. Kennedy is going to beat Batista in 8 minutes and 38 seconds. And it's written here, it sucks to be Kennedy here. Batista rammed Kennedy's face into the side of the ring steps, splitting him open. Funny line here is that Cole was noting JBL and Batista had a storied rivalry. Then Kennedy went for a charge at warp speed and was supposed to crash his shoulder into the post. Somehow he caught his head, and now he was gushing blood bad. They go right to the finish. Batista's going to get DQ'd for choking him with his foot on the ropes. The post-match would see Batista deliver 3 spine busters and a Batista bomb. Kennedy's cut was so deep in his head, you could actually see what that dude was thinking. He needed 20 stitches to the scalp here. This blood makes a huge spectacle. Again, it's not planned. It just happens. What do you remember of this?
I remember it was nasty. It's, pretty disgusting. But Dave and Kennedy had really great matches before this. I want to say that the first match that Kennedy ever had with Batista was one of those coming out parties where you went, oh, hey, shit, Kennedy's really got something here. And in this particular situation, I don't know if it was him getting busted open or whatever, because that'll do it to you, man. Getting hit that hard and then that kind of a gash, the chances of concussion are big as well. So maybe he wasn't there all the way there for the whole match as well. But there's been better, and it's just kind of unfortunate.
Let's talk about the main event. We're finally here. It's King Booker. It's Rey Mysterio. And King Booker beats Rey Mysterio for the world title. 16 minutes and 46 seconds. Pretty good match. 3 stars. It's noted by JBL that Booker T's King ring is actually a Paul Bosch ring. He says this on commentary. And when I watched it back this week, I said, that's got to be Bruce's ring. That's your ring he's wearing, right?
No.
What?
So the one that Booker has is the one that Paul passed with. So there were 3 rings. The original was Paul was driving down I-10, going to Beaumont from Houston, threw some trash out of the window in the 60s, and the ring came off, and he lost it. Had a second one made. He was held up, robbed at a hotel. And they stole the second one. Had the third one made, and that's the one that Booker has. Now, the crazy story, and I've told this story before, but the first one that was thrown out with the trash, a guy called Channel 39 Studios about a year after Paul had passed and said, hey, I have Paul Bosch's ring. Well, we all thought, all right, he's got the ring that in the holdup, that somebody pawned it or somehow recognized it and was going to get it back. The guy was changing his tire on the side of I-10 in like 64 or whatever. I don't know what year it was, but finds the ring. Sees it's got Paul Bosch's name on the inside of it. Takes it home, loses it. Never finds it until he's moving in 1990. And when he's moving in 1990, he finds the ring and gives it back to Paul's widow, who gave it to me. And then I lost it. And I've yet to find it. So I had my own name.
The finish of this match is going to have Chavo Guerrero doing a run in, grabbing the chair. He's going to tease like he's hitting Booker T. But of course, he hits Ray. Booker gets the pin. He should. Why the decision? Is it we're reviewing Ray all right, we've got all we can do with Ray story-wise here as champ, or hey man, Booker's so hot and we can just slide Ray into a fun story with Chavo. Why the decision to pull the belt off Ray here?
Ray doesn't need a championship at all.
He's an attraction all on his own.
100%.
Got it.
Rey Mysterio does not need that championship at all. It was a nice run and a nice little thing to do for a while, and it was a good story. But once he got it, then you got to get it off of him, and this is a way to get it off of him and go into a program with Chavo. But Rey did not need to be world champion.
It's interesting to me that, we're going to see Ray get one more reign as world heavyweight champion and one more reign as WWE champion. But both of those reigns end on the same night they started on. But I think you just hit the nail on the head. Like, that dude's over enough and pushing merch enough and selling tickets enough.
Ray's Ray, man.
He doesn't have to have it. I got it. Overall, is this one of the most snake bit pay-per-views of all time? I mean, I know December to Dismember was pretty bad. But this has got to be on the Mount Rushmore of snake bit pay-per-views, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Horrible. Absolutely horrible. And sometimes you have them and it's just nothing you can do. And you kind of hunker down and you give it the best show that you can with what resources that you have available to you at that point in time.
No Mercy 2007 is probably on the list too. You've got multiple WWE title changes after John Cena got hurt. Man, I like talking about the fun shows, but sometimes it's fun to talk about the bad shows. But we talk about
this one was rotten.
We talk about them all here, good, bad, or indifferent. And I can't believe this is real. But Bruce, next week, you and I are going to drop our 8th anniversary show. Does it feel like we've been doing this 8 years, dude?
What?
Yeah, 8 years next week, man.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, I think it's is that right? August 3rd, August 5th? Something like that in 2016. It's pretty crazy to think. Wow. We've been doing this forever, dude.
It's a long time.
It's a long time.
You're old.
I'm old. I think.
Yeah, you're old.
I think.
Look at you with your gray beard.
Yeah, it is coming in now. August 5th. Yeah, was a Friday. And you know what's funny?
When I first met you, had the big afro and all black hair and everything. And
now it's all grayed out.
Yeah.
Well, hanging out with you is stressful, man.
Please, you gave me a heart attack.
Well, I don't know that I would take credit for that. You were chugging.
You take credit for everything else. Might as well take credit for my heart attack.
What credit do I take?
Oh, all of it. Well, all of it. I suppose you hired Dave Silva.
I would not claim that at all.
Yeah, you did. You did, though. See, that's the thing. You don't want to claim Silva. I mean, I don't either. But.
You know what's crazy, dude? It's hard to think about that, but 8 years ago, next week, when our first show dropped, that's also my first date with Megan, my now wife. Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
2 crazy things started for me in my life on August 5th, 2016. No, in many, many ways. We're going to be talking about a big show next week. It's one that has been maybe our most requested show for the last few years, and one that you're pumped to talk about, I'm sure. All Things Kane. How Glenn Jacobs got into the role, the evolvement of this character, the debut. I mean, we won't fit it all into one show, but I know you love that backstory. I mean, you love that story so much. You got a Rugrat running around who's grown and voting and driving and drinking, and not in that order, I mean, this is a big part of your life, and we're talking about it next week here on the show for our 8th anniversary. How about that, Bruce?
Yeehaw. Should Kane sit in with us?
Glenn Jacobs or Pritchard? Kane Pritchard.
Pritchard.
Kane Pritchard doing a run-in on a Kane show would be good.
Yeah.
You still have one of the original Kane masks hanging around in your office?
Sitting right there in my office.
What if next week we promoted right now that Kane would appear on Something to Wrestle, and then Kane Pritchard opens the show in the Kane mask?
You really think you don't? Oh shit! Next week it's going to be hard. Yeah.
I love you. Just realized. Wait a minute! Isn't that fucking SummerSlam weekend? Yes, it is.
Oh yeah. Okay.
There's a little event called SummerSlam.
You think I have trouble getting up in the morning on a Sunday morning?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know when we'll tape it, but
we'll make something happen.
We will make something happen, and I hope that everybody listening to this tunes in to SummerSlam. I can't believe it, because normally I at least have it in my mind's eye that it's in late August. It's at the very beginning of August this year. And what a show it is. A stadium show in Cleveland. I know we don't talk about current stuff, but man, how pumped are you? SummerSlam, one of the tentpole events, at least in my mind. It's WrestleMania, it's SummerSlam, it's Royal Rumble. These are the big daddies, and we're just days away. Are you pumped? Are you excited? Or are you ready for it to be over with?
I'm ready for it to be over. Yeah, I'm completely ready for it to be over with.
Well,
but I'm very pumped. I'm extremely excited because I do. I love the huge shows. I hate, this is what people don't understand. I think I've had this discussion. I hate crowds.
Yep.
I hate people.
Yep.
I don't like being, congested and things like that. If restaurant gets too crowded, man, I've got to go. Can't do concerts, football games unless I'm kind of in a box or away. I have claustrophobia bad. I mean, I have just this really horrible claustrophobia that triggers. And I love to go out in the stadiums and feel that energy. There's nothing else like it, to be in the middle of a, enthusiastic crowd that's there for your stuff. So I'll do that. I absolutely love it, but I couldn't be in that crowd watching the event. I would have to either watch it at home or be away to where at least I have, nothing on my back and I know I can get out. So while I love crowds, I really hate crowds. So I'll be out there wandering around somewhere.
This Saturday, August 3rd, don't you dare miss it. The Cleveland Browns Stadium, Cleveland, Ohio. There's still some tickets on sale at Ticketmaster.com, or do what I'm doing and watch it on Peacock. I can't wait. It's going to be a big time show. WWE seems to be hitting home run after home run right now on pay-per-view. I'm sure this week will be no different. It's this Sunday, WWE SummerSlam. See what Bruce has been up to. And check us out next week on our 8th anniversary show of Something to Wrestle with Bruce Pritchard.
Sometimes Jimmy Jam came along. Those were the best days, now they're gone. Freebird Road on YouTube. Check it out and add to it and tell them that Bruce Conrad sent you. And rock on.